Our kid will get my mother's name, not yours, according to my husband, who sees the birth certificate during a terrible 20-hour labor. I objected, but he snipped. You have no say. Looking at me, the nurse said, Want me to tell him the truth? As his universe collapsed before his eyes, my heart hammered. Philip, my spouse, is not his actual name. We had been married for 3 years after 6 years together. We had a strong bond, I felt. I erred. I ought to have seen the warning signals. I really ought to have. Taylor, Philip's mother, told me straight away she disliked me. She was the sort of lady who treated her kid as if he were the second coming of Christ, behaved like the world owed her something, and made every discussion about herself. It started off with little things initially. Slights re Phillips, backhanded compliments, little insults at my looks, upbringing, even job. But it became worse with time. She had to control everything in Philip's life. She objected when we were engaged because Philip proposed with a ring he selected rather than allowing her to decide. She complained about the area, the layout, and the wall color when we purchased our first house, as if it were her property. She would come by unexpectedly and behave as if she shared our life, and Philip brushed it off every time I grumbled. She exhibits precisely that. You are familiar with her nature. She means well. She did not. None of which she wanted to be the most significant woman in his life, and the fact he selected me made her boil. Once I became pregnant, I reasoned that things would improve. I was so incorrect. The second Taylor entered hyperdrive upon learning we were pregnant. She suddenly had ideas about everything. She loathed the names I suggested for the baby. She demanded, absurdly, that I should eat her pregnant diet. She even attempted to advise me on what wine to drink, as if my own physician was inadequate. And Philip let her simply pass by. Though I never knew how far that reached, he was always a mama's boy. Taylor said something 6 months pregnant that still makes my blood boil. I hope the kid looks like Philip's side of the family. She asked me straight in the eye. Your traits would not fit a female. Philip answered nothing but was right there. That was the first time my marriage underwent a serious change. Imagine my due date fast forward. Work was horrible. For 20 hours I was in agony. My body seemed to be breaking apart, and Philip, he was just barely present. He was in the room, but physically, not here. Intellectually, emotionally, visited. He entertained himself with his phone, calls from his mother, twice left the room to fetch coffee while I was in agony screaming. At last, however, our daughter was born. Before Philip picked the birth certificate papers from the nurse's hand, I hardly had time to touch her. He omitted asking me about the name. He hardly glanced at me either. Our kid will have the name of my mother, he re-Philipped, as if it were a given. I took him to be kidding. He was not. Weak, tired, still shivering, I managed to mutter no. We decided on a name jointly beforehand. He chuckled at me. A smile. There is no participation for you. The air seemed to have collapsed from my chest. The nurse, an older lady with keen eyes, came in close and said, Want me to give him the truth before I could even grasp what was happening? My heart thumping, I turned my head to meet hers. I wasn't sure what she meant. And then I noticed her attitude. She had knowledge. Whatever it was going to fundamentally alter everything. Glancing at the nurse, I felt my heart pound in my chest. She was informed something. Still grinning as if he had won some kind of game, Philip was too busy writing on the birth certificate form to notice the change in the air. I made myself speak, my voice soft yet strong. What exactly you mean? I spoke to the nurse softly. Her gaze swung to Philip, then back to me. Not here, she said in a whisper, but believe me, you really ought to know. A cold crawled down my back. Looking at Philip, still blind, something inside of me broke. For years I had been the calm, sympathetic wife, the sensible one, the one who let things pass. Not at all anymore. I responded, my voice growing louder. You're not calling her after your mother. Philip stopped writing and turned to face me as if I had just smacked him. Excuse me, I replied, jaws clenched. She is our daughter. We came upon a name together. Change it only with me. You cannot undo it. His jaw locked. My mother, I have no interest. Before, Philip had never shown me such genuine anger. Irritated? Correct. Dissatisfied? Plenty of times. But this was not the case. His expression contorted, he continued. You don't get a say, in a low, frigid voice, once everything I have done for you. You should appreciate me even allowing you to put your last name on this certificate. I thought of myself as having been punched. The nurse drew a quick breath. Oh, hell no, she said softly. Philip fell short. If you find it unsatisfactory, maybe you should not have been so demanding throughout the pregnancy. You worked only one job, carrying my kid. You cannot make decisions about this. That is my rights. Something within cracked. The nurse then carried out something I never would have anticipated. She grabbed the clapper from out of Philip's hands. You won't treat her that way. Shock tore over Philip's face as his head turned toward her. What the devil are you talking about? But the nurse paid no attention. She turned the pages over and focused her attention on him. You're fortunate, she refilliped coldly. She doesn't yet know the complete tale. And just as then, I knew. He had been surreptitious about something. I cast a glance toward Philip. He now looked pallid. She is speaking about what? Nothing, he answered too quickly. She merely lies. The nurse interrupted. I do not agree. Philip's entire body tensed as his gaze swung between us. The nurse then dropped her voice and bent down to say, You should check the insurance records. I needed time to absorb what she said. Still, when I did, it felt like a train. Over my pregnancy, Philip had been the one managing the insurance documentation. I had expected him to handle things. I never raised questions about it. What would I? Unless... I glanced to him, dry throat. Philip, what then did you do? His hands came together in fists. Nothing. But lately he was sweating on his forehead. His respiration had become different. He trembled. The nurse shook her head and breathed fiercely. This is not new to me. Women believe everything is good and rely on their spouses to manage anything. And afterwards, they discover they hardly even rank as the main parent. I became frigid. From his chair, Philip leaped up. We're about to go. I passed over him. You altered my documents on insurance. My voice started to tremble. I did what I was supposed to, he snapped. You do not grasp. Then make sense of it for me. Silence is. The nurse tucked her arms in. Should I be pulling the records? Because I am able. Right now. Philip's expression contorted into absolute fury. He pointed at me. You are not engaging in this. You recently went through birth. You're not thinking straight. You were hormonal. But I was acting clearly, and I knew very definitely he had screwed me over. Philip pulled my wrist. Not tough, but strong. Here we are not doing this. I jerked my arm away. You have no say over me. His jaw twitched, and for the first time I saw true dread. Not resentment. Anxiety's a thing. Turning to me, the nurse said, Are you here to see the records? I hesitated, no at all. Indeed. Philip started to chuckle bitterly. Perfect. You seek the truth? You were not intended to find them. The room seemed to be smaller. The nurse cast me a glance. Let me go pick them out. She left me with Philip alone. I fixed him in the eye. You will tell me what is happening. Just now. He ran a hand over his hair. You know how difficult this has been for me? Your mom, my mother. She wanted everything handled by me. He halted, gasped loudly. She said, I waited. He reluctantly agreed she understood what was best for the infant. You were too soft, too emotional, she re-Philipped. That I had to get under control. I became unwell. You then what? Took me off the insurance of my own child? Designed yourself as the only legally appointed guardian? Philip gave no response. I needed just that to know. Back with a folder, the nurse returned. She opened it for me after setting it on my lap, and right there was it. Philip had indicated himself as the only father. My name was absent. My body became frigid everywhere. You were supposed to pick her up from me. Philip not denied it. I felt I could be ill. The nurse's voice resembled steel. You are fortunate I found this. Such things have caused moms to lose custody of their own children. Philip got to her feet. You're overdosing. I rocked my head. Done. He chuckled. Real laughter like I was a joke. What? You suppose you could just walk off? You recently brought a baby home. You were planning to travel somewhere? On my shoulder, the nurse rested a hand. She won't be on her own. Philip started to smile, then stopped. And at that, I realized his world was going to fall apart. Philip had a visage that combined despair with wrath. The gears in his mind were clearly churning. He reasoned he could negotiate his way out of this, that he could control me like he usually did. Not tonight. I spun back to face the nurse. Right now, what do I do? Carefully staring at me, she said, Do you have family nearby? One you know you can trust. I carried out. The sister of Bella she lived around 30 minutes away, and unlike Philip, she really worried about me. I reached for my phone to contact her, but Philip took it from my hands before I could even dial. He hissed, You are not doing this. The nurse moved between us, her voice stern. Turn it back around for her. Right now. He stopped for half a second, then flung my phone into the hospital bed. You are erasing a mistake, he said. I called Bella and turned away from him. She started on the second ring. Hey, how are you? The infant is doing. I opened my lips, but no words emerged. My throat tightened, like if I spoke, I would break down totally. Taking the phone from me, the nurse talked instead. Hello, Bella. Here from the hospital is Nurse Luna. Right now, your sister needs you here. Bella didn't even hesitate. I am on my way. Philip gave out a sour chuckle. Indeed? Running to your sister, you are? She hates me not even at all. I turned to look at him. Perhaps she saw through your crap before I did. His face sank black. This is nuts. The nurse spoke with great clarity. No. The ridiculousness of what you attempted is clear-cut. And believe me, personnel of hospitals speak. Men who attempt to kidnap their spouses' infants are not very welcome. Though he said nothing, Philip's hands tightened. I spun back to face the nurse. Are we able to alter the paperwork? Her nod was deliberate. Certainly. We also want to record everything. There will be a legal track whether he attempts anything. Philip tightened. You are distorting this out of scale. Still, he was perspiration. He understood he had lost situational control. His phone rang then as well. I initially paid little attention to it, but then the screen showed the name, Mama, and just as then I knew. He had not done this by himself. It was his mother behind this. Complete all of it. Philip turned off the call, but before he could put the phone away, I grabbed his wrist. I responded, my voice trembling with anger. You are going to tell me the truth. Not anything tells. The nurse started folding her arms. You might inform her right now, or she will learn when she reviews the legal papers. In any case, it is over. Philip's gaze darted to me, then to the infant in my arms, and I saw remorse for the first time. I had to hear it out of his lips. What action you took? In silence, he yanked back as I grabbed his phone. Fine, he said. You want the truth? My mother advised me to make sure the baby was legally under my name alone. In that case, you wouldn't be able to take her should you ever try to leave me. The arena whirled. With my whole body trembling, I grabbed our daughter more tightly. He added, his voice acerbic, She could get me a lawyer. She informed me that because you made less money, the courts would not favor you. That if I played things correctly, I would have complete custody. My stomach whirled. Before she was even born, his mother had been arranging to send my baby far away. The worst thing about it is Philip matched it. I felt as if I may vomit up. For what purpose? I hushed. Why would you treat me differently? Philip worked a hand over his face. Because you never valued my mother. The chamber grew quiet. The nurse drew in a sudden gasp. Oh my God, she said quietly. I giggled, a lifeless, frigid chuckle. I didn't worship your mother, hence you sought to take my child? Philip omitted a response. I needed just that to know. Turning to me, the nurse asked, We will immediately now repair this. She took my documents and left the room, most likely to get the hospital administration involved. Philip came to me. Look, this spiraled out of control. We can resolve it. I tightened a hold on my daughter. We are no longer here. His face contracted. Her father here is me, and I reply as her mother. I also won't use her as a weapon, unlike you. His jaw closed. You are making a mistake. No, I responded, my voice strong. I only made one error, trusting you. Bella came in at that point. She realized something was amiss by glancing at my face. What the devil is running through? Philip's phone rang once more before my reply could come. Bella grabbed this time from his hand. She turned to face the TV. Not simply was his mother phoning. Textbooks existed, many of these. And she turned pale when she opened the phone because, naturally, she knew his password. She turned the TV toward me, and my world slanted once again. Philip was sending texts to another lady. See you makes me really excited. We can at last be together once the baby is born. There won't be anything left. She will be caught. The redness of Bella's cheeks came from wrath. Are you kidding me? Philip got white on his face. I glanced at the texts, my sight fuzzy. He had not only attempted to pilfer my kid, he had intended to part from me to be with someone else. Throughout my pregnancy, even while I was carrying his kid, I felt peace come over me, a kind of quiet that is perilous. You have no clue what you have just done, Philip said as I watched. Whispers Philip sprang for his phone, but Bella pulled it back. Oh no, morons, she snarled. You're not pulling out of this. I stayed fixed on the screen. The books mixed together, my hands trembling as I went through. Philip had been having a relationship elsewhere. Not just a passing fling, a full-blown relationship. And it was deliberate rather than just cheating. She has nothing left. She will be trapped. One book touched me like a gunshot to the chest. It was not driven by love. Not even regarding me, was it? This has to do with control. He had intended to trap me, take my baby, rob me of my rights, drive me into a corner from which I had nothing left. Finally, he was heading out with someone else. I had the sensation of drowning. My ears could hear my heart hammer, my body still weak from delivery, my newborn daughter resting in my arms, totally ignorant of the man meant to guard her having already betrayed her before she could even open her eyes. I turned to face Philip. She is someone. His lips opened, but there was no sound. Bella scrolled forward, her face deepening. Then she froze. Oh gods. Her eyes wide, she stared up at me. You are not going to find this believable. She flipped the phone once more, and there, back at me, was a known name. The second lady was daughter of a close friend of his mother. The same Lady Taylor had been urging him toward for years. The ideal gal. The one she wanted him to wed rather than me. I thought the earth had turned sideways. This concerned more than simply control. This went beyond simple dishonesty as well. Plans included this. It was set this way. And Philip had followed through as well. Though I'm not sure what tore within me, I felt something crack. Still pained from childbirth, I got up and pressed the phone on Philip's chest. For what length? My voice was just dead calm. Philip looked pallid still. You do not believe this is it? Bella bitterly laughed. Oh, absolutely. Because it seems as if you and Mother Dearest were preparing to start a whole other life apart from my sister. Philip's jaw contracted. She wasn't meant to learn Likeway. I chuckled. A cutting, austere tone devoid of humor. Not expected to find out like this? I went back and forth. I was thus only meant to wake up one day and discover my spouse had taken my baby and replaced me? He rolled his eyes with great boldness. You are acting dramatically. Something within me started to spark. From the hospital tray, I picked the birth certificate papers and ripped it in two. I am not under your authority. You do not rule her. My voice shook with wrath. The door swung open after that. and Taylor arrived in. Her gaze looked around the room, finally resting on the torn documents in my hands. She then saw the phone still open to the texts. She stopped. Her lips started to curve then. She said then, with flawless clarity, I guess faking now is useless. Bella emitted a half laugh, half disbelief sound. Are you really serious? Not even going to be denying it is you. Taylor gave a cheeky smile, and that was the instant I understood she was not even sorry. There was no error in this. Her strategy had always been thus. I gestured to Philip. You allowed her to do this. Philip pushed hard for a swallow. He had still not said anything, as there was nothing to say. He had turned from me, utterly. Taylor moved forward, her voice shockingly quiet. Pay attention, honey. You have to realize that the infant would benefit from this. I grabbed my kid closer. My infant would be better off kept as far away from you as possible. Taylor muttered, like I was a toddler having a fit. She refilled coldly. You lack the means to raise her by yourself. Set reasonable expectations. Philip generates more income. He has consistency, you does not. Bella let out a snark. Oh, shut the heck back off. You're dumber than I imagined if you believe my sister's gonna roll over and let you kidnap her baby. Taylor went to Philip. Address this. And that's when I noticed it. Hesitancy. Philip was oscillating. Years of under his mother's supervision he had been. He had carried out what she advised. Now, however, he was stuck now. Leaning up close, I said, if you go through with this, I will destroy you. Blinked he did. You don't. I will take you before court. I am going to reveal everything. Your fictitious insurance documentation. Your liaison. You are trying to take my kid. I will see to it you never see her once again. His gaze veered to Taylor, and he started to lack certainty for the first time. Taylor saw it as well. She snapped, Philip, she's pretending to be blushing. We already have the attorneys. I fixed my gaze exactly at her eyes. I then suppose we will find out who wins. Silence. Philip cracked later. He looked to his mother and said, Mom, I am not able to perform this. Taylor froze. Excuse me? Philip said no more than a whisper. I too didn't see it getting this far. Taylor's face contorted with resentment. Don't act foolishly. We had this discussion. Philip cast a glance at me. At the infant in my arms then. He backed off. I cannot, he said once again. Taylor let go. After everything I accomplished for you, you're going to toss all of it for her. Philip started to flinch. I knew I had won right then as well. Not because Philip had developed a conscience out of sudden awareness. However, he was feeble. And for once, the person dragging the cords was not his mother. Furious, Taylor ran off. Philip chose not to follow her. Bella gave our cousin, our lawyer, a call and had him go to the hospital. We officially updated the papers using the nurse's documents, therefore ensuring my complete possession. Philip lacked will to resist it. Deep down, he realized he had already lost. A few days later, I left the hospital with her. Philip left our house without following. Taylor also? She sought to get in touch with me. She even showed up at my flat once in an attempt at conversation. I kept her out of there. Bella gave the police a call. She quit trying at last. Philip walked out. I applied for a divorce. And in relation to the other woman, she ditched him the second she knew he had nothing more to give. I needed some time to sort out what had occurred. To come to terms with the guy I had loved, the man I had married, had been intending to ruin me. But just now, crutching my kid, I knew one thing for sure. I'd won. Not in a small-scale retribution sense. Not in a manner that would have the suffering vanish. But I had fled. Also Taylor, she had missed. She had worked to create the ideal life for her kid. And now, she went empty-handed. And I had everything that counted.